I'm in the studio today, so sorry about the sound, but I wanted to share with you how the process, the journey that went into coming into this studio space and finding the studio space that's a part of our home. And I'm going to talk about manifestation as a part of this process, but really what manifestation is. And I did a video about what intuition actually is neurologically from a neuroscience standpoint. And actually, a few people were like, oh, that sounds like manifestation. So I wanted to, yes, I want to talk about that. And it's funny because I already had planned on talking about this. So you all are keyed in to this idea that yes, there's a biological, a neurological, and something backed in neuroscience. I want to talk about it in the sense of also sharing my story about the studio because I think it's really cool to it's a really good example of manifesting something. So I want to talk a little bit about my husband and I, our relationship with manifestation. My kind of connection with spirituality has gone like this, and right before I met my husband, somebody gave me this book. It was called The Secret, or maybe it was a video. I don't know. So I remember that I just watched it. I watched it and wrote down because I wanted to manifest a partner. And so I wrote down this list of everything that I wanted in a partner. And a couple weeks later, I met my husband. And so it happened really fast, but there's a lot of things leading up to it, right? Fast forward years after that, both of us became more skeptical. I actually was like a hardcore atheist based on my past, and really, really skeptical. Really, both of us were really science, really more science minded. We both are very logical science minded. And so both of us we started making fun of this idea of manifestation because I'm going to talk a little bit more about Dr. Tara Swart, but she mentioned, I heard her talk about this, about manifestation. She was skeptical of the explanation of how it worked, right? And that's, I think, what I was skeptical of because I know that manifestation works, like creating a goal, because I've done it my entire life. I've said I want something and then gone out and got it, or it came to me, right? Or I put my mind to it, did it, whatever, however it came to me. And yes, there are coincidences and things like that, but I think that spirituality has so co-opted so many things that are natural and scientific. And so a lot of us kind of just cut ourselves off from any sort of mystery or any sort of idea that is associated with what spirituality has co-opted, and manifestation is one of those things. Also, one of the things that I think people think about manifestation is that you don't have to do anything, right? You just kind of wish for something and then, put it on your vision board, and then it happens without you actually having to kind of do something to make it happen, right? And there's a balance there, but and I'm really playing with the balance of more allowing things to happen, visualizing things, but also putting in the effort, right? Showing up and doing the thing. So I think that's another reason why it's kind of hard for me or others to think about manifestation, because it's been sort of thought, that the universe is just going to give us millions of dollars if we just think that. But I think there's a lot more that goes into actually creating anything in this world, right? There's sort of this yin and yang, the doing and the being, Right. Another kind of argument that we have had, or not argument, but like discussion that we've had in regards to manifestation is the idea that it seems like it's just a lot of like white people, privileged white people talking about manifestation in like the spiritual way. And so we've had a lot, my husband and I have had a lot of discussion around this. And so one of the things that goes into this is being able to, I mean, basically you can manifest whoever you are, wherever you are, because we always, as humans, are wanting to grow. But you cannot see something that you haven't seen before or that you are not aware of. So, you know, if you are underprivileged, chances are you're not going to have that representation. You're not going to be able to see what is possible, right? Because you don't have anybody out there telling you that. So having this idea of like all these white people saying like, you know, that's the other thing about The Secret. It was like just all about money or just all about, it wasn't about community. It wasn't about deeper things. It was just all these white people saying like, oh yeah, manifest your dream house, you know, so kind of surface level. So I think that's another reason why like we just joke about manifestation because it's so ridiculous. So just a little bit about how manifestation actually works, right, in our brain. It goes back to, if you haven't seen my video about intuition, it's very similar because we are accessing, like I said, the emotional, the intuitive, and the logical sides of our brain. And so we have in our brain this, we call selective filtering, selective attention, and value tagging. So it basically means that our brain focuses on whatever we want it to focus on. And I'm going to demonstrate this through my telling the story of how we came into manifesting the studio. And so basically, you know, your mind has a strong negativity bias. So if you think, well, I could never have a studio, or I could not, like, I mean, before last year, this wasn't even a thought in my mind. I had never, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But basically, manifestation is setting a goal, opening yourself up, right? So I'm going to talk about this too, opening yourself up to the possibilities. And that is such an important part because most of us never allow ourselves to open up to the possibilities, right? If you haven't read Dr. Tara Swartz's book, it's called The Source, and she's a neuroscientist, she's a psychologist. She has studied and makes the connection of neuroscience and science to actually this manifestation, which is really just making something happen, right? So, and aligning our emotional state, our intuitive state, and our logical state so that that thing comes into being, which there's so much science behind this all now that we know. Anyway, let me get into the story and I can kind of explain this a little bit better. So, before this was even a thought in my mind of creating this studio space, I have a friend and her name is Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. She moved into this house, and in the back of the house was this beautiful little garage that she made into a studio, and she told me about her vision for the studio, and something inside of me just got excited. And I was like, I know you have felt this before. So it's this feeling of, I want that. I want that. Oh my gosh. So she was telling me about her vision where she would have artists over like to stay, and she would have people being able to paint with her and take classes and open up the side of the space or this door so that it went out into her beautiful backyard. And it just felt so amazing to me. And so, yeah, that was the first thing. And so again, so when we talk about being able to manifest, when we're talking about it from a neuroscience standpoint, we have to be able to see that that's a possibility. Lacey Phillips from To Be Magnetic, I love how she talks about manifestation too in a science-minded kind of way, but she talks about having expanders. So these are people who show you what's possible. So this is, I think, very important, very, very smart, from To Be Magnetic. You can check them out. So yes, I had her. She was my first expander. She allowed me to say, oh my gosh, like put it on your radar, right? So same thing, like when you're buying a car, you haven't seen this kind of car before, and then you start seeing it everywhere. That's what happens because our brain it's an energy saver. It only wants to focus on what it kind of knows and save energy, right? We can't, it selectively filters. We can't take in all of this information all the time, right? So it filters usually based on our past and what we've seen. So if you want to create anything in your life, find expanders who can open you up to what's possible. So she was my first, and then I saw another artist on Instagram who was creating a studio. It was beautiful. And then I got this idea in my head, something inside of me, literally my intuition or whatever, said, create a vision board or put images together. And I don't make a lot of vision boards, but anyway, I just had this idea that I wanted to put together these images. So what's happening there in my mind is I am reinforcing, right? So our brain is like plastic. Like we can create new neural pathways for us to focus, and we call it value tagging. So tag those values or things that we want to focus on that bring value to us. So I'm really reinforcing this idea that, oh, this is something that I actually want deeply. And I'm actually acknowledging it. I'm not pushing it away, saying, well, I could never do that. I mean, I didn't think it was going to be so fast, but I thought maybe 5 years down the road. So I started putting all these images together. Ones that spoke to me, right, of studio spaces. And so then I do, with my manifestations or my goals, I do this thing where it's visualization. So visualization and writing together. So both of these things strengthen those neural pathways for your brain to be able to see what's possible. And it's like reinforcing that idea that this is possible, and allowing your part of your brain that will be able to make connections and find those connections wherever they are, right? So you're opening your brain up to being able to make those connections and find those things for you. Just like the car example. So I do this thing with visualization. I could talk about forever why it's a science-backed, and I'm going to do a workshop on this, a science-backed way of getting to your goals. It's such a great way of doing that reinforcing. So I do this thing where I visualize and sense myself in that space. What would I be doing, right? I would be holding classes or having people over, feeling that in my body, feeling like it's real, writing about it as I'm visualizing, kind of this twofold. And so getting a real sense of what would I be doing in this space. And it's just, again, that reinforcing, right? And so, a lot of times we talk about this like vibration or whatever. I don't know about the vibration, but the positivity, the positive emotion that you feel, it literally primes your body to your brain to become aware of these possibilities and be ready for them when they happen. So fast forward a few months, and in the summer, our landlord, we've been renting for 8 years at this point, and our landlord told us that they were going to sell the house that we had been living in. And so I realized this is my chance to actually have the studio, which I had not even thought would be a possibility in this year. And he wanted to have a wood shop, right? And so what happened was when we started looking for houses, that was one of our priorities. It was a huge priority. So when way back, in 2009, end of 2019, when I started this process, if I had not had listened to that little urge of, ooh, I want that, and then gone down the road of sort of visualizing, accepting that this is something that would be really fun for me, I probably would not have had it in my, selective filtering in my brain to be like, oh, let's look for a studio space that's like this big space. And so, I think it's really important to also leave room for the mystery and coincidences. And I have another book in my book list, if you want to check that out, that is all about coincidences in this sort of flow, in living in flow and manifesting, or whatever you want to call it, creating your goals. So I think I love leaving room for that sort of magic to happen. But yeah, I hope this makes a little bit of sense about what really is manifestation and how does it work. It really is about opening yourself up, having those expanders. If you can't get yourself to the place of believing that you are worth it, or that you can have this thing, because that's another thing, right? I'm having to deal with, oh my gosh, I have this amazing thing now. I have to sort of feel that I deserve it, That's another thing that is very subconscious. But I think when people talk about a vibration, that's what they're talking about, is the sort of feeling of self-worth, because there's so much science behind this too, of like on the subconscious level, we don't allow ourselves to step into these things. We don't embrace life in the way that we could. We allow people, or we allow ourselves to sort of sabotage ourselves. So finding those expanders, working through those blocks, if you are feeling like you aren't worth it, looking for people who have done it before, whatever it takes to sort of get yourself to that level of feeling like you are worthy, you are deserving to have the things in life that you enjoy, or that bring you joy, that bring others joy, that are a part of your authentic expression. I am so on board with all of that for you and for myself. And so I'm always here if you want to have a session with me. But I hope this has helped kind of like explain a little bit about manifestation in a more practical way. And if you have any questions, leave them below, and you can like this and follow me if this has been helpful. And maybe there'll be some more of these kind of things to come. So I hope you've enjoyed a little view of my studio and this chat. Take care.